Greetings. Welcome to ITR Live. I'm your host, Chris Hagen. We are back here in Studio 130 for another fun-filled, action-packed episode of the gold standard in Iowa conservative podcasts. Joined here today with John Hendrickson and President Herbert Hoover. How are you gentlemen doing today?
We're doing fine.
Good. Shake the table and get,
Yeah.
Okay. So for those of you that are not watching us on video here, we've got the Herbert Hoover bobblehead here, and I had to jiggle the table to get his head to nod up and down for him to.
So he's nodding in agreement.
Good. Excellent. Well, John, the gnome's not here.
Oh, I know.
Yeah. So anyway, I just give the folks an update, and I told you about this. So the gnome, if you didn't join us last time, had been with us for a year, and he was the traveling trophy prize for my church's trivia night, annual trivia night contest, which my team had won last year, and they let the gnome come here to ITR World Headquarters to be here with us. Well, so he had to go back and defend him, and our team, which I thought performed very well, came up just short.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a little salty about it.
Yeah.
So I told you a little bit about this, but we got to recast this for the folks. So I like trivia. I think I know a few things. Last year I actually had a couple of Supreme Court questions. It was great. The whole thing, I knew we were in trouble when at the very outset, the theme of this year's trivia night was Taylor Swift.
Yeah, that's awful.
I was like, oh no. So, however, the answer to the very first question was Herbert Hoover.
That's right. Yeah, I was excited.
So it's great. And then we were actually in first place most of the evening, came from behind, got back into first place, and lost on the very end because we did not correctly answer how many continents Taylor Swift would visit on her current world tour. We guessed 6. The answer's 5. So anyway, that's the end of it.
Hopefully next year you can recapture the prize.
Yeah. Anyway, so the gnome's gone.
Yeah.
We're going to soldier on here with President Hoover, and I think it's going to be a good year. So call this season 2 of the ITR Live podcast.
That's right,
call it whatever you want.
Yeah.
But here we go. So there's your update. I also was chastised over the weekend by one of our listeners.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I don't know if I shared this with you.
No, you did not.
Because we have not had a construction update lately.
Yeah.
And so I guess we sort of lost interest. Apparently the construction is done and has been done sometime last fall for our, I guess, patio. There's a couple of, but for those of you that are newer to the show, they were tearing up the courtyard here outside of Studio 130 for a long time and built a kind of an odd looking patio in the end that you said you saw somebody use it once, or was that Dan that said that?
I've seen a few people use it, and Dan has seen
Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah.
Well, it is being used then.
Yeah.
So I have yet to go out. We haven't had an ITR Live cookout yet,
No.
but if we do, we'll go out on the patio.
Yes, yeah.
That actually would be kind of fun.
Yeah,
wouldn't it?
would
All
be.
right. Okay.
Yeah.
Good. Okay. We got to get down to business, John. Article in Axios Des Moines today was about tax notifications.
Yes.
So this is like right in our wheelhouse.
Yeah,
Of all the
yeah.
stuff that we pull out of that daily newsletter, this is our thing. So the article was lamenting mostly the title is One Big Thing, which is how they kind of start their deal. Iowa's tax statements cost $1.9 million. So Polk County alone will spend $100,000 this month to mail special taxpayer statements to its roughly 146,000 property owners as required under a new state law. So, John, is it worth it? 1.9 million statewide to mail these notices out. Why is it worth it?
Absolutely. This comes from the provision of the new property tax law passed last session that we call direct notification. And so basically what taxpayers will be getting pretty soon in their mailboxes is a note that will explain what local governments are planning to do in terms of their budget and spending. And it will also give them a relative idea how much their property tax bill will increase as a result of that budget.
So just so we're clear, and I know these numbers get to be big
Mm-hmm.
and sometimes lose their meaning, but the LSA estimates the cost of sending these out statewide at $1.9 million. The total amount of property taxes paid in the state of Iowa is over $5 billion.
Yes, yep.
This is relatively speaking pencil dust compared to what is being extracted from property taxpayers statewide. And I guess what kind of got me a little bit was some of the statements from the Polk County supervisors about this statement. Because look, this is to get I guess I got to back up 2 steps on this. People are mad about their property taxes. They're mad because of all these different reasons that they believe their property taxes are going up. Many folks get frustrated when the tax assessments come out, which is in the summer. You can't do anything about it then, and we've talked about that. You can only do anything about it when they're actually spending the money. Well, there's no notification. You get that assessment notice, or you get the breakdowns. You don't get anything in the mail when they're actually getting ready to spend your money.
That's right.
And that's what this is.
Yeah.
Great. And so you can see where it goes, the proposed increases and everything. Well, the Polk County Board of Supervisors don't like that. Supervisor Matt McCoy responded during the meeting, calling the mailing ludicrous, while Supervisors Chairperson Angela Connolly said it's stupid. Okay, your perspective. I think those both apply to how high your salaries have risen, but kudos. I believe that Supervisor McCoy voted no on that, so I guess maybe that's only fair for Supervisor Connolly. However, there was another comment in here that I want to make sure I find, John, that really kind of what they're saying. This is from the article. The report will probably be an overwhelming amount of information for most property owners. The budget staff told the supervisors last month. An overwhelming amount of information, John. What do you think about that? Is that overwhelming for folks?
No, I don't think so. And when we were, ITR has been on this issue for quite some time. When you want to look at providing more transparency or more sunlight into the property tax system, and several years ago we were doing research into this and looking at other states that provide these notices, and a lot of states do. For example, Minnesota does, and in fact, one of our colleagues was showing a notice from Minnesota from one of their relatives, and it actually will provide not too much information, but just the right amount of information for taxpayers to start understanding what's happening to their property tax bill. The other thing I found out when I talked to a lot of other states that have very good direct notification laws is that local governments respond the same. They do not like this because it's almost like showing light to a vampire. It basically forces them to retreat because, in a way, they don't want people to show up to the local budget process because it provides more sunlight on what they're doing.
Well, go ahead. Finish that thought.
For example, I think the gold standard of property tax laws in the nation is Utah. Utah has a very strong truth in taxation law, and I remember one of the architects of that law told me that local government officials rather run nude through the streets than face a truth in taxation hearing because, people demand answers of why they want an increase in spending. And so what we're seeing repeatedly ever since the legislature, and I would describe it as a mild reform to Iowa's property tax system, we've seen nothing but pushback from local governments who want to try to resist any efforts to lower property taxes or actually bring more transparency to the process. We should empower people more with this information.
I agree with that, John. I want to make sure, though, that we acknowledge that there are locally elected officials that are doing it the right way out there and do want the public. And we had
yes, absolutely.
We had a friend of the organization who is a well-respected member of his board of supervisors that actually contacted us and said, please help to get the word out about time and place of where we're doing our budget hearing because I want the feedback.
Yes.
That's
Yeah.
great. I mean,
Yeah.
I want to make sure that we acknowledge that, and
Yeah.
that's what you really want. Is
Yeah.
you want somebody that wants to take that.
And it's unfortunate that those voices aren't picked up more in the media, because all these stories, it's all the local government officials that are in opposition to these reforms.
Right. One other thing too, and maybe it's in this article was asserted that this information is already available online. Well, in some counties it might be.
Yeah.
In a lot of counties it's not.
No.
Some counties it's buried at the bottom of the legal notices in the local newspaper.
Yes. Yeah.
Some of them they put it on some difficult to find corner of their website.
Yeah.
It is the exception
Mm-hmm.
where it's easy for the individual property taxpayer to go and find out when this is all happening.
Yeah.
We do this professionally, John,
Mm-hmm.
and Sarah does it almost full time.
Yes. Yeah.
And for us, it can be difficult to find out, well, when's their hearing? What's the
Absolutely.
proposed rate? What's the proposed,
Yeah.
what was last year's budget? And we have to really dig to find
Yeah.
this stuff. And all we're saying is just put it in one place where people
Yeah.
can easily find it. And the easiest place to find it is in your mailbox.
That's right. And do you remember, and I think it was the 2019 reform where they required cities and counties to post that notice on their website. It wasn't really a notice. It was basically their intent of the increase. And even that was hard to
Oh,
find.
yeah.
And also that notice was not easy to interpret.
Mm-hmm.
And so the benefit of these direct notices is to provide, one, more information for the taxpayer. It also forces local governments to hopefully justify why they want to increase spending, and it will encourage more local participation. And I think those are all good things. And we, they're working. And I look at, again, Utah is, I think, a very good example of where this has had a positive impact on reforming the property tax system. Kansas has also, we don't always think of Kansas as good tax policy, but in this instance, they sort of duplicated what Utah did, and direct notification is working, truth in taxation is working in Kansas as well. And so I think, as Iowans start seeing this, they're gonna hopefully participate more in their local budget process, because that's as we've said repeatedly on this program, it's the spending that's driving the property taxes.
Yes, absolutely. And look, the tagline for our family of organizations, John, is that Iowans for Tax Relief is the voice of the taxpayer, because we believe that when taxpayers' voices are heard, it makes a difference.
Yes. Yeah.
And so we strive to be the voice of the taxpayer at the Capitol when your state tax dollars are being spoken for.
Yeah.
But we need individuals to do this at the local level.
Yes.
And so we're trying to give individual Iowans more of a voice as they engage with this process. And so it's just more is better.
Yeah. And, I've seen examples in Texas where people have, not just attended their local budget hearing, but have actually sent emails to their local government officials that have stopped a tax increase. And so when people voice their concern, it translates.
We're seeing it. We talked a little bit about this with Sarah last time, but what's happening with some of the ballot questions that are coming up right now in March, and it is changing the conversation. We are seeing more people act with more information, better tools, and their voices are being heard, and that is absolutely a good thing, without us even having to take a position on the appropriateness of a revenue purpose statement or a bond referendum or whatever it is. But just at a minimum, can we have people get more information and show up in the process? That's great. Well, okay, I want to transition to a couple of legislative updates, John. And one of them is sort of segues off the property tax conversation, which is, we've talked about this, universal basic income. So there's a bill moving through the legislature right now, which Iowans for Tax Relief has engaged on, that bans cities and counties from offering universal basic income handouts. So here locally, it's the Uplift project. And that bill passed the Iowa House last night with had mostly, I don't think any Democrats voted for it, but most Republicans supporting it. A few did not. But I know that you've watched this, John. I mean,
Mhm.
your thoughts on that bill and getting it done?
I think it's very positive for the legislature to do this because, as we talked about, this is an example of pure socialism, and also it's a dangerous policy because this is not sustainable. You know, that's a word that the left really likes to use quite a bit, sustainable, and this policy is not. And so I think this is dangerous because, you know, it starts out as just maybe federal money, but then what happens next?
Yeah.
And also, again, as you and I talked about, I think on the last episode, this is not how you solve poverty.
Right.
You know, we have, we probably spent, if not billions, if not trillions, fighting poverty since the 1960s with Johnson's War on Poverty.
Yeah.
And it didn't work. You know, the federal government or states cannot, in a sense, spend poverty out of existence. And if that was the case, then, you know, there wouldn't be any problems in California or Illinois or New York, and where we're seeing a lot of these, massive homelessness and poverty. And I remember Minnesota when it used to be jokingly the welfare capital of the nation. I mean, that's not how you lift people out of poverty.
Yeah. Well, here I want to read. Kudos to Representative Steve Holt, who's chairman of the House Judiciary Committee, for his work in getting. Not only did he floor manage the bill, he really worked hard to get the votes together to get this passed. But he had some really good comments in closing debate. His closing comments on the bill. Here, this is from the Cedar Rapids Gazette, quoting him. In the end, I believe these programs will increase government dependency and poverty as opposed to independence and prosperity, he said. It would appear to me that the goal of these pilot programs seems to lay the groundwork for a massive expansion of guaranteed income programs. And the comment that we made in the pre-production meeting this morning, John, is that one of the concerns with this bill is that, okay, now you've started the program, even if it's a pilot program for a few people, and you can't take it away from them now. That's the problem with these entitlement programs, no matter where they are who offers them. Once you give a benefit, it's exceptionally difficult to take it away.
That's right.
And so, yes, we could. The bill even grandfathered in those until the end of the pilot period. But yes, that's exactly the point. Is once you start them, you can't end them, and it does increase it increases dependency on poverty. Yeah. Representative Holt had some comments. I remember watching this about studies that show that they're actually counterproductive. There's data that it increases the amount of people and the amount of need and disincentivizes work and getting off of those government programs.
Absolutely.
So he did, and I guess quite simply put, to your original comment, is these are socialism on steroids. Mm-hmm. This is we made a lot of progress over the past few decades to take those great society entitlement at the federal level and reform them. They still need work. Yeah. But it's not just cutting checks out every month. But this takes us backwards. That's right. And even more of just giving away the money.
Yeah. And, we mentioned this before in the last one, but I think it's worth repeating that a lot of states that were reforming welfare in the 1990s demonstrated this by moving from welfare to what they called workfare. Yeah. And, Tommy Thompson in Wisconsin and John Engler in Michigan and other governors that were literally moving people off poverty and into the middle class. And that's how you do it. And it's not based on just cutting checks. I mean, this is just bad policy.
Yeah, and I'm going to take a minute to talk about the politics of this bill, because I think there's some folks that are misreading it. And I heard one of the other criticisms was local control. And I'm not going to go on my local control rant again, John. I think anyone that listens to the show regularly understands where I'm at on that. But let's be clear about what you are giving the locals control to do, is that regardless of where the source of the money, if it's a one-time money for this pilot program, what this is local taxpayer resources, primarily the source of that being property taxes, is those taxpayer resources being given away, just cutting checks out to other people. one of the things that unites Iowans politically across the political spectrum and is intense is their hatred of property taxes.
Yes, yeah.
Iowans are mad.
Yeah.
And what this does is not only, is the system sort of socialism. You're taking the most hated tax and almost just showcasing how much you're willing to just give it away.
Mm-hmm.
I believe that this is a very dangerous vote, especially for the Republicans that voted no on it, because there could absolutely be the attack coming from the left to these folks for not taking a strong stand on misuse of local tax dollars. So we will see how that plays out. I mean, I know I've said before, ultimately, I don't know that votes really matter.
Mm-hmm.
And I agree with that still, but something's got to go in those mailers.
Yes.
And I just worry that, look, property taxes is one of those issues on which Republicans win elections.
Yes. Yeah.
Over and over.
Yeah.
Property taxes, holding the line on property taxes. This sort of undermines that a little bit.
It does. I think that's an important point you raised.
So
I really do.
Kudos to those,
Yeah.
especially to Representative Holt for getting this across the finish line. The bill is over to the Senate now. I believe that the floor manager in the Senate, and this is sort of breaking news, is going to be Senator Scott Webster from Scott County, who's excited to work on this. I have not heard as much resistance to this in the Senate, but we will be watching that and continue to work at the Capitol to make sure this gets this done. But I'm optimistic about the bill moving through the Senate. Another legislative update, which is really exciting, is the constitutional amendments.
Yes, yeah.
Which we've been working on. We talked about how we had polling on that, but it's a resolution that moves through. Both the House and the Senate have had or are having subcommittees on that today.
Yes, yep.
And I don't know the exact timing in the Senate, but the House Ways and Means Committee, is it Ways? I believe so, is scheduled to run that out of committee tomorrow. Yes, that's right. Well, depending on whatever day you're listening to this, none of that will make any sense.
Yes, yeah.
However, the week in which we are recording this episode, John, is the week in which the resolutions of both the House and the Senate are moving. Explain why this is a big deal for Iowa taxpayers.
It is, and this is very exciting for us. First of all, just a quick refresher that what these two amendments do. The first part of it is it requires a 2/3 majority or supermajority requirement of both houses of the legislature to increase taxes. The second part would constitutionally protect the flat tax. And so both these are important taxpayer protections. And so as Senator Dan Dawson has said, who chairs the Ways and Means Committee in the Senate side, has said that there's, in a sense, constitutional protections for other things other than the taxpayer. And it should be hard for the legislature to raise taxes. And so these are very important amendments, and especially as we transition to a flat tax, because it would be very, I don't want to say easy, but it could potentially be easy for a future legislature to go back to a progressive tax or to look at some other type of wealth taxes that some of these other states are doing, especially blue states. And so these are important protections for the taxpayer, and something that I think, Iowans for Tax Relief has really been fighting about for a long time is to get these protections for taxpayers. Yeah.
I think these could end up being two of the most important things that come out of this year at the Capitol.
I agree. Yeah.
Really significant. Yeah. I mentioned that these are only resolutions. This is a unique thing where the governor actually doesn't weigh in on this. This is solely an action of the legislature. And so what that means is once they move both of these resolutions, that once they each act on the same bill, and we'll get into the whole idea of like substitution and all that, but once the House and the Senate vote on the same resolution, which could be within days or a week or two, that's done. And it doesn't go downstairs to the governor, and it will move on, and then they'll act on it again next year. And but it sure does look like this is flying. I have heard from our folks at the Capitol that the work the data that we had in the ITR Foundation poll was really helpful on this, and that really a lot of legislators really responded positively to that, to show just how much Iowans want or are open to these kinds of protections from a rising property tax bill, because we still believe that you strip away the partisan labels and all that, Iowans instinctively feel like they're overtaxed and want these protections.
Yeah.
And so because here's the thing, if you're a legislator thinking about this, or even tactically, not only is this vote popular, but it bodes very well for will this pass once it goes on the ballot? Because you don't want to just throw things on the on the ballot in 2026 that aren't popular. So it does give puts a lot of wind in the sails of folks that are trying to give Iowans the opportunity to vote on the structure of taxes in Iowa. So I think it's great. Good. Well, we're going to keep watching those things, and we are still in the Capitol this year, John, going to have a conversation about income taxes.
Yes, yeah.
And we have that on very good authority that conversation is imminent, right?
Yeah,
okay.
we do, yeah.
All right. So that's good. We look forward to that, and still optimistic that we're going to be able to make some additional progress on income tax rates this year. So very good. All right. Another reminder, coming up on March 20th is ITR NFIB Tax Day, our luncheon at the downtown Hilton. So you can find more information on that on our website. You need to register ahead of time if you can, so that we can add you on the meal count, so that we can make sure we order enough food for everyone. But we'd love to see everyone there at that. And that's all I got for today, John. How about you? Usually this is the time where you bring up
I was just, it is, depending on when folks will listen, but right now it's Super Tuesday.
Oh,
so this is, that's a big primary day. In fact, North Dakota had their caucus, and former President Trump won that.
Still has won every state in which he's competed, except Nikki Haley won the swamp primary in Washington, D.C. It sure feels to me like even the media has now accepted that race is over. Nikki Haley's still in it, still getting some votes, but
my parents were the first this morning. They were to vote in their Super Tuesday primary in their precinct.
Wonderful,
so they were very excited.
Well, good. So. Well, and then we will come back in a future episode, because I want to once we get more of the data. But the Des Moines Register's Iowa poll was out.
Yeah, that's right.
They trickle it out a little bit at a time, but we saw really some eye-popping numbers for the presidential race. With the preview is that Donald Trump beating Joe Biden by 15 points in Iowa after winning it by 8 in the 2020 election. So some of the folks that I communicate to with, what does that mean down ballot? And if we're in an environment where President Trump is beating Joe Biden by even more than 10 points, there's going to be a lot of down ballot Republicans winning a lot of elections this year.
Yeah, so I think you're right.
So anyway, we will spend some more time on that in a future episode, because it is important stuff. So with that having been said, we're not out of time, but we're past the time that I've allotted to record this episode.
All right.
So anyway, thank you, John. Thank you, President Hoover. And with all of that, we will see you next time on ITR Live.